Peace, YouTube. This is Florboon coming to you today with a new topic of discussion. I just realized how curly my hair is. Check on in. So, I have glare. So hopefully it works today. You never know what YouTube. Peace, Cadillac. Peace. Peace to the east, the west, the north, and the south. Check on in. So I'm gonna get in a new topic of discussion. Hey everyone. Peace, love, and peace and protection for those who are experiencing the hurricane in Bahamas right now. I'm sending a lot of love and protection. It's I'm so sorry to see what's going on with our brethren and sistren in Bahamas. It's really quite tragic to witness. Hold on, I telepathically hear my little ones about to come in. You know, here in Florida, they act like it's Super Bowls. So every school, every facility, everything is off, including Starbucks. Everyone's taken off. They get excited whenever there's a hurricane. So, okay, so let's start off the conversation. As you've seen, you know, normally I don't touch on a previous reptilian. He is a present-day reptilian, Eligio Bishop. But I do like to, oh, thank you, Yafi. I do like to touch on him and his cult because I feel it's very relative to the to crisis state of these introductions, of the introduction of certain. Now, if I'm slow in talking and breathing really hard, the biometric field here is really crazy because remember there's a storm coming, so my sinuses and my head and my first eye are pulsating. You know, I remember I'm one of the indigenous women from the Caribbean, so I feel all kinds of the energies and the change in the magnetic field when a storm comes. So if I'm breathing a little heavy and taking a time to talk, just take in consideration there's a storm in a close proximity, so I'm sorry. So yeah, normally I like to veer away from Eligio Bishop, but I feel it's very relative to the state of the hybrid program. And I think a lot of times for those who are part of the ET community, the UFO community, we probably touch on this more so than other groups. You know, there's forms of people who actually accept that there's extraterrestrials or beings from other worlds, and maybe, I mean, they feel it's a little far-fetched. Others may feel it's a little far-fetched that these beings are interacting with our government or that they're even in our society. But as you know, if you've been part of Florboon's platform for a long time, I know and I accept and I realize that there are many different groups of extraterrestrials, interterrestrials, and interdimensionals that are very much interacting with the populace, not only on a governmental level, but in your daily lives. And why this has happened is it's a form of infiltrating a society in order to keep people at a certain level of suppression and also to monitor you and yours. And in order to do so, what better to introduce a group of either benevolent or malevolent groups of extraterrestrials that have mimicked human form via sometimes technology or a hybrid program that has allowed certain beings' DNA to be introduced to humanoid DNA to allow them to physically mostly look like us, but have very much the same mindset as the beings that they were hybrid from. And we're going to go into the reptilian agenda, which I've talked about, but I think it's very important, and also to go into the to some of the caution on what is occurring with the change of a cycle and many of these different breeds of hybrids that were created in a black ops lab, governmentally stimulated and funded, that were introduced into the populace via foster care. Okay, and when I bring this up, the first person who comes up is Nature Boy, better known as Eligio Bishop, also known as the former cult leader of Melanation, now Carbonation. And he is a classic case of hybriding that has been introduced into the populace for an experimentation that many of you don't even realize that being in contact or even the conversation about him or even us witnessing this being is part of why the government does this. Now, I'm not going to get into the history. Many of you know about him, and I don't even want to give him that much credence and credibility, but his species is of interest to me. If you know the background of this being, and I will speak on him in many, he is one of many. And again, in the ET and the whistleblowing community, we also talk about the super soldiers. And the super soldiers are just that. They're a hybrid group of children that were either created with the DNA of extraterrestrials or interdimensionals or inner earth, interterrestrials, or they were MK Ultra, meaning they were cultivated and mind compartmentalized to allow for them to show up in society in a way that would be beneficial for a society, for a governmental purpose or agenda. Okay, so there's all different forms of the hybrid programming that sometimes is not only, not everything fits under one umbrella. I mean, not everything fits in one compartment. It may be under one umbrella, which is a black ops system of a governmental agency. And remember, there's many different facets of governmental agencies who have their own agenda and their own system of experimentation. That's why I bring up the super soldiers that many of you in the Intelist community also are aware of, because that's another conversation that happens probably more regularly. But when they try to stop or they kind of cap the conversation is when it's connected to extraterrestrials. Big up to a wonderful, and I miss him so much, Max Spears was one of the major whistleblowers and also known to be a super soldier. And I've spoken about him before. So if you don't know Max Spears, do some research on him. He gave his life giving a lot of information based on the Satanists and Luciferian sect and how it's interrelated to some of the extraterrestrials and also some of the interdimensionals that are interacting with, on a governmental level with us, unbeknown to the main populace's, awareness. Most people aren't aware. And that's why they are allowed to do this, and they're allowed to do it very freely because your lack of awareness gives them anonymity. Okay, so big up to Max Spears. Rest in power, my love. Wonderful man. He wasn't perfect, but by all means, and neither am I or anybody else. But he did a lot of work, and I think he should get a lot more credit than I think most would even give him. You know what I mean? He literally went out giving intel, and I personally, it's my opinion, think he was murdered for doing so. Okay, so big up to Max Spears. Hold on. Let me get my ET. I still have my pillow. If many of you remember my my first, I'm covering my bosoms because a lot of times you guys get offended when I'm showing my bosoms. I'm not even showing my bosoms, but I had so many fun. Big up to the busty babs. This is the struggle. I appreciate how I'm formed, but it can cause a little ruckus. So let me put my ET cushy. Remember you guys when I made my first video? I still have my ET pillow. I love this guy. Even though his eyes weren't blue at the time, remember? So we are here, little people. Hold on. I hear little people. I hear little people. Are we being nice, ladies? Okay. Mommy slash referee slash nurse slash meditation specialist, naturopathic doctor slash mother slash counselor. This is welcome to motherhood. Mothers should have so many more titles under their belt because we are a healthy mother. Let's just say that we cover so many tiers of under motherhood, under the umbrella of motherhood, that it's amazing. Anyway, so when we talk about the governmental system, I am so family. I can't even put the pillow there. The atmosphere right now, you feel it, like my breathing is so hampered just from the biosphere. It's just changed, and it's just like I have to take deep breaths. Okay, so normally you hear me chat you up without breathlessness, but apparently just accept Flurburn for her limitation today. I hope you're okay with that. Yes, please put a like on the video if you come and listen to the video. I appreciate it. You know, it's just as a common courtesy. And yeah, the thick, dense air, Leo, it's just, I can feel it. And normally, you know, you guys hear me chat it up like a New Yorker. And I talk so fast all the time. I notice it when I'm talking slower. So anyway, so we have a governmental system, and I was talking about how they have introduced these hybrids into our populace via the foster care system. And listen, as someone who personally has dealt with foster children, I think there are so many children who need amazing homes that aren't being cared for by their parents. And I do think that there are phenomenal foster parents out here. So let me put that out as a disclosure, as just my PR to say, I'm not saying that all foster parents are terrible people or the foster care program is all based on a diabolical agenda. I am in no means say I have zero agenda when sharing this. I'm sharing what they do when they want to introduce hybrids into the system, and part of the way that they introduce them into the system without most people noticing is they create these children via super soldiers or MK Ultra children that have been traumatized and taken from other families that are Satanist families or Luciferian families, and they introduce them into the populace by putting them in the foster care system. And this is their way of doing soft hybrid introduction into the populace. And when they do this, these children, these hybrids, which obviously are a different species, have different temperaments, different ways of thinking, they're basically being leaked into the humanoid population under your noses. Okay, and a lot of times you will notice that some of these children, not all, like I said, and just utilize your discernment when I'm sharing with you. Remember, I'm a lover. I love all children. I'm a protector of life. So by zero means do I mean to share this with you to scare you, to disallow you from trying to help any children. That isn't the reason for me sharing this with you. It's to make you aware, to know that there's an agenda that supersedes anything past what normally we would be, we wouldn't have notice of. So Nature Not, I like to call him Nature Not, Eligio Bishop, Nature Boy, who again was a leader and is the leader of a cult presently of Carbonation, previously known as Melanation, is one of these such, it is my opinion that he is one of these such reptilian hybrids that was created purposefully to, and especially I think he was part of a dark ops program, and I actually think he comes from a breed that they knew was going to have a stronghold over the brown populace, especially at a time when consciousness was raising. There is a trigger, especially in some of the indigenous brown copper people right now, that would go off at the end of a 400-year cycle that just ended. They knew that this cycle was going to cause, for those who, brown people were under what we consider to be a karmic residual spiritual lesson for the last 400 years, and a little longer, depending on the groups you come from. Some are undergoing that now, like in Brazil, they haven't really gone through their 400-year cycle. They kind of are fresh and new. So it depends on where you're located. So I don't say all brown people on the planet. For the most part, the brown people of the Americas, of the North Americas, were going under a spiritual karmic lesson. And they had to go through, every group goes through this, every religion, every sex, every species goes through this. It's part of the cycle. And now we're in a new cycle. So I can speak about this pretty openly. And hopefully there isn't any sensitivity to it, because it is what it is. And because we're at the end of the 400-year cycle, many of the dark Kabbalists knew this time was coming, and they knew that the brown indigenous people of the Americas would wake up, because now their alarm clocks went off and they're over, they basically, it's almost like that residue is done. and it was time for them to wake up. And because of this mass awakening, they knew that they wanted to control that demographics of people as well. They want to control the entire planet of all peoples, of all complexions, but primarily of those who are going through that karmic cycle, that their tether was totally, done. They were finished with that cycle, that lesson, those lessons spiritually. So they introduced a few forms of agents, governmental hybrid agents, that they cultivated and created in labs. I personally think that Nature Boy was created. I think he was a part of the hybrid program, as I think that there's a few in the brown pseudo-conscious community. I can name a few. I personally think they're from the reptilian, a low-field reptilian that was created, and its primary focus is fight, flight, and fornication. It's the basis of all reptilian primal behavior. They have a lack of self-awareness, very heightened in intelligence. This is where it's a little different, and I think this is where people fight this theory. And but in itself, it's interesting because they fight this theory, but in itself, it kind of makes sense, because if they are a hybrid group of extra or interterrestrials, remember, these beings are heightened in intelligence. Most humanoids have been suppressed or GMO to the point where their lack of consciousness and their lack of self-awareness has to do with the limitation in their gene pool. Now, if you take some of the hybrids of the reptilians are very, very intelligent in comparison to the average day humanoid that is unaware. Let's just say that, meaning that when you take the species and you breed it with the human, it still expresses itself with heightened intelligence, superseding that of the average day, humanoid on planet Earth. So that being said, you take some of these hybrids, you cultivate them via MK Ultra's forms of training, and MK Ultra program does not have to be as uniformed or as as uniformed and corporate based as some of the Satanists and Luciferians like to do. Some of the MK Ultra, it can be implemented by putting children in a system where they know they're going to be abused, sexually manipulated, meaning that they're going to break them. And by breaking the human psyche and the spirit of a child, and especially if the child is of another species, you allow for a certain amount of information or cultivation of another type of agenda to be able to be easily taken in based on the fact that you broke them, compartmentalized their brain, and allowed for another agenda to kind of be sub-based inside of their conscious state of being without them knowing, or sometimes with them knowing. Okay, that's a whole nother program, and you've seen they stopped my whole video on MK Ultra. Let me take a deep breath. My gosh, this air is so thick. So based on that, you have that going on. So with Nature Boy, he's one of the many in the pseudo-conscious brown community that have been purposefully and strategically placed within the populace as an enlightened one, as one detailing conscious enlightenment, coming on with a undertone of that metaphysical community. And again, because the reptilians are so heightened in so-called intellect, it is appealing to the mass humanoid who is still very capped and limited in even their based intelligence. And that's what makes these reptilians alluring. Also, the base nature of the reptilian is they have an ability to manipulate with their mind. They're very appealing. They have an appeal to the masses, especially to the female, and also to males. But they're very manipulative by the nature, and they're very, very alluring. It's almost if you get captivated under a spell. Most heightened in reptilian genomes have the ability to put people under their, it's not a spell. I use that just to let you know. It's not a spell. What it is it's a brain capability that is linked to psychokinesis, or like a type of telekinesis that goes into like influencing somebody else's brain who's more limited, less conscious. So because of that, Umar Johnson. I think Umar Johnson is just an egomaniac. I don't think he's a reptilian. I think he's an egomaniac. I think he wasn't loved, or he's an atypical product of a man who grew up not feeling confident about himself. He's very smart. I think just genetically, he just comes from a decent breed of intelligent brown people. I don't think he's a hybrid. I think he suffers from his own form of egoism, and I feel like he just utilizes his intelligence as a way to manipulate and also to extort resources from other brown people based on the fact that he feels like he supersedes their level of intelligence, you know. So I think he's a little different. I don't put him in the reptilian. I don't think he's that bright. I think he's smart, and I think he comes from just very smart, regular brown people. That's it. I think he's a conscious pimp. Yeah, more so that. Yeah, he's under the conditioning of the patriarchy. He's a classic patriarchy specialist. Okay, and he knows that most brown people and especially when they were in their lack of awareness, love to see, and it's healthy to see someone who it displays themselves intellectually sound and researches a lot of things about history, and I think that's what made him alluring. Envy is something different. Nature Boy is something totally different. His level of manipulation goes past even the subconscious level, and that has to do with his reptilian lineage. Okay. I'm sorry. Please put a like on the video. I know I'm struggling with the video today. I don't like trying to talk so fast and can't do it. And like I said, for anyone stepping into the room today, the storm's coming in. So what's happening is that the biometric field is really heavy, and it's causing breathing differences like sinuses, you know. So that's what happens. And also because I'm a copper indigenous from this arena, I feel it more so. So I feel it in my genomes. Like I have the actual, I feel a storm before a storm comes. So you're seeing me physically, I wouldn't say handicapped, but you see me physically being hampered by those elemental energies coming inland, because remember, it's in the Bahamas. I'm here in Florida. So I'm sorry. I apologize if I seem a little winded because I'm not moving around. You're not used to it. So I apologize. So we're talking about Nature Boy. And, you know, I really want to talk about this because I think everyone is really not understanding how manipulative and how susceptible the humanoids are to these diabolical type of species. A species in itself can be fine. As you know, I'm not a fan or an advocate of demonizing other species of extraterrestrials, interterrestrials, or interdimensionals. Why? Is because every species has its own way of interacting with its society. The issue I take with him and those that are hybrid is that the government is creating these hybrids and they're introducing them into a populace of humanoids or earthlings that aren't adjusted to their type of behavior patterns. And because of that, it's unfair because you become susceptible to these heightened manipulative type of species that is able to get into your mind and influence you in an unhealthy and unsavory way. And if you are unaware of this gentleman, you see that many of the members of Carbonation previously or in present, you will notice that they all have a general disposition that allows for them to be more susceptible to his form of infiltration. And they've all spoken about him feeling like they were under a spell in his presence, feeling like they were being sucked, like energy being sucked. Now, when we go into forms of reptilian, I personally think he's of the reptilian because he has the frog eyes. I think I've shared his video before, or his picture of MB's eyes, and he has a different form of reptilian eyes. He doesn't have the natural slit of some of the other kind of covert reptilians. There's different types and different sects of reptilians, and do know that they're just like as many humanoids as we have in our stratosphere and in our galactic plane. We do have as many forms and tiers of reptilians. Not all reptilians are the same. You can have a snake who's a reptilian. You can have a alligator. Totally, they're both considered reptiles, right? But one shows up a different way and another shows up a different way. Amphibian, okay? Yeah, he had the amphibian eyes, like a frog. Okay, so his eyes look different. So I mean, whatever breed they mixed him with was of the eye. Now, what's interesting with his eyes, with the eye shape, which was likened to that of Lisa Vanderkamp from Housewives of Beverly Hills. Now, why does that matter? Because there are different types of reptilians, and maybe a certain breed has a certain capability. Now, Lisa Vanderkamp has the same reptilian eyes as Eligio Bishop, which I found is very interesting. And they have commonalities in how they interact with others. Now, Lisa Vanderkamp, big up to Lisa Vanderkamp. I actually am a fan. I like her. I actually have a affinity for her. I do. So I don't say this to degrade her in any way. I think she comes from a different, same breed, same type of breed. Excuse me, but I think because she's of wealth and she comes from a different family lineage as far as where whatever she was been hybrid one from, and the degree of hybrid. I don't even think she's a hybrid. I think she is what she is. I think NB is a hybrid. I don't think he's fully reptilian. I think he's been cultivated, and his DNA has actually been manipulated to take on some of the negative lower forms of the species that he's mixed with. But I think Lisa Vanderkamp is actually the heightened form and the fuller, more holistic form of whatever reptile base they come from. I think she's more of that. And I think they took parts of that type of reptilian, whatever it is, same eyes. They have the same reptilian eyes, which is very interesting. That's why I tell you, don't pay attention to complexionism. Complexionism is something totally different, okay? You can be of the same complexion, different complexions in the same species, okay? You can have a lighter and darker versions of the same species. They hybrid people on this planet all the time. The fact that we have lighter and darker is because there's been a hybrid program. That's why you see chickens inside of a factory that have pink eyes and white feathers. Okay, that's why you see pigs that have pink skin and no hair. Okay, those are hybrids. Those are genetically modified organisms taken from the original, and they pulled off what they wanted out of those animals. They pulled out the melanin for most of them, and that's how they've genetically homogenized them. So that's why I say complexion doesn't matter, because they've been homogenizing people on this planet since the planet has been colonized, and it's been colonized by many different beings. Okay. Many different species of other ETs. So be careful saying hybrids, because you can have lighter and darker of the same species, okay? It's a fact. The chicken in Kauai who has dark feathers is a chicken. Same as a chicken in the factory that you consume that has the pink eyes and white feathers. Why don't they look alike? Because one has been genetically homogenized. Parts of its DNA have been extracted and modified so that it pulls out what they don't want, and they only keep what is desired. Okay, and many of our geneticists know this. People work in heredity. Okay, so, and with that, we go back to Eligio Bishop, the leader of Carbonation, who is a cult leader, and we talk about this being, and we talk about where he comes from, and these are all things that he's denoted. Let me just state this as another discussion, is that Eligio Bishop has already disclosed these things. I'm not saying anything that this being has not already disclosed himself. He has leukoplasia, and he just spits out everything. He doesn't have any sort of, he has impulse control issues, and that's also a sign of him being hybrid. Okay, so his lack of ability to have self-restraint and he has impulse issues, that's low breeding. Okay, so hybrid programs take part of a species, whatever they want in the species, and then they take it, isolate it, and allow it to cultivate into a full human or hybrid. Okay, and then they take that child and or a clone or whatever they're creating, and they introduce it into society. And Eligio himself has stated that he came from a foster care system. And many of the times when you see these black, dark ops, governmental systems, they will introduce people into the populace that have no family dynamics. And that's how I know they've either been cloned or hybrid. They will introduce them into the populace. They'll come on YouTube as some sort of sensation. They're very alluring. They're very manipulative. Brother Polite was also one of them. I had the displeasure. At the time, it was a pleasure to meet Brother Polite. He was one of the people online that I had seen on a conference with Dr. Delbert Blair, quite a few other people, and he also, I know, is a hybrid of some sort. Now, I don't know where he comes from. I think more so he might be bred with the Anunnaki, just based on his vibration, but he has that hybrid quality. He's super, super, super manipulative. He's able to sidebar your conscious state of being. He's able to get in your head. I was exposed to it, so I can say firsthand that when I first met Brother Polite, he was doing a lecture and I was sitting in front and he was getting in my head. So that is a form of the hybrids. The hybrids have the ability to do that. Also, there are people that actually have learned the process of sidebarring people's consciousness and getting behind their head and manipulation. There are people that actually train for that, but the people who naturally have this ability and can do it a little easier, those are who are hybrids, who use forms of telecommunication naturally, because remember, talking with our mouths is archaic. All of the higher species don't talk through their mouths. That's almost like cave communication. All of them use telethought, telekinesis, telepathy as a form of communication. Okay, so that's why when they hybrid these beings, they don't necessarily have to use their mouth for communication. That's why they can manipulate you easier, because they can get behind your mind much easier than most. So even when I met Brother Polite, which I know to be a hybrid, it's my own opinion. Okay, so let me state this. This is my own opinion based on what I only tell you what I've experienced and what I know. Okay, my own opinion is that Brother Polite is also a hybrid of some sort. He isn't of the hybrid type of Eligio. He's something else, and that's why I say family. They have been introducing these genetically homogenized hybrids that they're creating in laboratories and dark governmental ops systems, and they are placing them out into the populace as a way to control you, control the narrative of consciousness that you're experiencing. They know that we were going to wake up. They make sure that they preempt it by putting those quote unquote conscious beings, these really super intelligent beings, these beings that seem like that are so alluring and so cultivating, and you don't realize that form of allurement that you have with them is artificial. It's artificial based on the fact that this isn't a human, it's a subhuman, and that the subhuman has a natural ability to get behind your brain naturally by its very nature. And that is why in the love and light community, we have all of these male narratives of all these males talking about, oh, they're blowing up bases and they're super soldiers, or you have in the pseudo-conscious community with all these brown males saying, oh, we're super, we study all the Kemetic languages, and they seem super knowledgeable, and they seem like they're into everything you're into. Oh, they're vegans, they're so on. But had you ever realized that a lot of these beings that are being introduced into the populace, where do they come from? Are they naturally part of that system? What is their family dynamics? Why all of a sudden do you have this host of males with lack of self-awareness? Because listen, if a male is really, really intelligent, okay? And when I say intelligent, I have to say that loosely because everybody's perception is their way of seeing intelligence. So I'm saying super, super duper intellectual, beyond their normal environmental cultivation. Let's just say to that, okay? So you have these beings who are super, super intellectual. They study and they're very stringent, but on one level, they're super intellectual. Now, why I say you have to pay attention and you have to utilize your discernment is A super intellectual being has mastered self-cultivation and also self-mastery in usually self-restraint, and they're usually have some sort of healthy self awareness to a certain degree. Why do I say this? Is because it's very odd, and me coming from the genetic field, heredity field, to see people that are super intellectually sound that lack self-restraint. It doesn't make sense. Usually when someone is very intellectual, they have quite a bit of self-restraint, meaning that they're able to, you know, control their sexual paralysis, or their even their verbiage is very stringent, and how do you say, when they talk, they're able to speak and without offense, or almost like a lack of ability to control the narrative. You know what I mean? So that's all I'm saying is, like, I've been around enough, including my father, big up to my daddy. I've been around and reared in family of intellects, to a lesser and greater degree. Okay, so both, on both sides of the family. And I've had the pleasure and privilege, and I'm grateful for that, to be around many of the different intellects internationally, and in my university, and people that I meet here, absolutely, and in my own personal life. And one thing I know as a general consensus is that most intellects have self-mastery and self-restraint. And when you're seeing all of these pseudo-conscious people speaking so much amazing verbiage and being able to master forms of intel on history, but they lack self-restraint in their own personal lives, it lets me know that there's been something unnaturally incepted. A person like Eligio Bishop, who talks about getting all this knowledge, which we know he gets from Google. It's so interesting to hear him say, oh, he has all this knowledge, and I'm so, you know, I'm so knowledgeable, and it's all about the knowledge. That man has shapeshifted. Hold on. This man has shapeshifted his information at least 54 ways. You know, like 50, wait, hold on. You know, when they have like 50 shades of gray, they have 50 shades of Eligio. Eligio will change, he will shapeshift his information, at least 50 shades of Eligio. I have to say that because he changes everything. First, he said when the girls first came, when Eligio, now let me back up because I know people confused who are not. If you aren't aware to, we have a wide room, please put a like on the video if you're coming in the room as a common courtesy. I really appreciate it. When Eligio first came on the scene, I know some people don't know Eligio Bishop, okay? So when he first came on the scene, was a young man, he contacted me, and many people don't know, or you do know. Some of you know me from me mentioning him every once in a while. Eligio contacted me many years ago. Apparently, he was watching my videos because that's what he does. He's a parasite as well, which we'll get into why reptilians are also, you should be very careful with them because they're parasitic and vampiric. They steal your energy and they steal your ideology by their nature. Anything that has to colonize is a vampire. Okay, colonizers are vampires. It doesn't mean if anything that has colonized anything is a vampire. It is stealing and taking resources from something that it does not have itself. Okay, so any form of vampirism and colonization is all one and the same. Okay, people colonize your mind. Okay, so he's one of them. So nature Nazi, Melanie the High Priestess, right? High Priestess was here at the beginning. So, you know, many years ago, Nature Boy was contacting me. I didn't know who he was. You know, he apparently was, and he looked like a Martian. So, of course, I would be allured by anyone who looked like a Martian because he looked like a Martian. First time I seen his picture, people were like, this guy keeps contacting you. He's saying you're amazing, you're God, you know, whatever. And finally, I saw who was contacting me and he looked like a Martian. And, you know, Flurbrun is all about the extraterrestrials, and I had to find out who this being was. And it didn't take me that long that's why I say the women or people who are involved in Nature Nuts cult are those who are perfectly aligned with being, who are perfectly be aligned to being fed off of and used, because they are what the vampire desires and also has the ability to perpetually manipulate without any sort of recourse or resistance, okay? Because they're also part of that type of vibration as well. So once Nature Boy came on the scene, I told you it was very odd. He came on the scene. He was very, very alluring to most women. Most women were allured by him. And the men who were allured by him were men that were mostly homosexual. Which makes sense, because if you see Elijah Bishop, especially at the beginning, to most men, he seemed appealing, but we found out later that Elijah Bishop was also a gay man as well. So he was perpetuating like he was a straight man. And this is also a reptilian quality. Reptilians are usually unisexual. They can either be asexual or they can be trisexual, okay? Most of these reptiles usually are engaged in hypersexuality with same sexes, okay? Or they're asexual. Yeah, he's still sexist thumb, which is also a part of the MK Ultra system, where he's still self-soothing as a grown man. But most of the reptiles, that's why I say for most of reptilians, you can kind of generally say for the males, most of the reptiles are usually trisexual. They're very hypersexed, and they will have sex with anything. That's why a lot of these men, parasitic men on this planet, that come from the draconian and some of the reptilian bloodlines, they have sex with everything: animals, corpses, women, men. They're just, what is it called? Pansexual, right? I think it's called pansexual. Am I correct? I think that's the term. They haven't any limitation because they aren't natural. A natural human being, that's why I said we got to be careful, because there's beings and species mixed here that you would not see. That's why we have all these sexualities on this planet. On this planet, at one particular time, there was only one species, and it was female. When men were implemented into the planet, they were grafted from woman, from Eve. Even though the Bible says women came from Adam's rib, which is Adam is an actual Adam, and Eve was the progenitor of life. So obviously everything comes from a woman. Okay, so that's just fact. You can look that up. Even in genetics, you got to take from an X. You can't take from a Y. A Y doesn't have any credence and credibility. That's why the child will carry the extra mitochondria of the mother, because the X is the progenitor of all gene pools. Okay, so that's why you can follow the marker of the mother's line, and that's why in society the patriarchal was jealous, so they make you carry the man's name, because they're jealous of the woman's ability to keep her lineage for generations past, even the progenitor of that first generation. Okay, and that's why this whole patriarchal thing is like you had to take the man's name. It's a jealousy thing. Okay. And that's why a lot of their systems are falling right now, and will be done by the time we enter into our pole shift phase, and everything will be swept and swept, and a golden age will begin. Okay, so I got that all out. So with this particular being of nature knot, Elijah Bishop, he is sexually, like I said, sexuality on the planet, it was either women only on the planet, and there wasn't any quote unquote men on men sexuality until many of the other species started to come on Earth. And him being most of the reptilians, draconians, and some of the other reptilians, they have sex with everything. They just have a lack of self-restraint. It's just in their society, sex is energy. So sex for them is pulling energy. It has nothing to do with like what we do, human to human. Earthlings, a natural earthling post parthenogenesis. Listen to what I said, family, because you have to listen to me. Natural humans post parthenogenesis, which is the process of a woman giving birth with herself without the need of a male host. Okay, post parthenogenesis are male female species solely. The earthlings themselves are male to female mating only. When you start to get other sexualities, it's either through forms of chemicalization or introduction of other species that don't have females, or forms of reptilians that are pansexual, that don't see sex as what we do for replication. They see it as energy vampiring. So that's why you get other species on the planet that utilize sex as a form of vampiring. They don't really have a limitation to whether it's children, human, animal. They just vampire. That's what they do. They're energy vampires. So that's why you'll see a lot of pansexualism show up on the planet, because there's too many other forms of species here that aren't necessarily humanoid in their sexual practices, and sex for them is a form of parasitic exchange for pulling. That's why I tell you, sea stars, my young ones, be careful of getting with some of these older males. They're parasiting off of your youth. It's an old form of energy exchange. Sex is energy exchange, and it's used more for that for other groups than for what was intended by earthling to earthling. Okay, so just that's why judging it is hard, because there's so many other beings and species interacting here on Earth, Terra, to the point where you can't you can't really say who's what and what. And also there's also an implementation of chemicalization, which changes people's natural sexuality to another. So we got to be careful with that. But also when we're talking in forms of talking about the pseudo-conscious community, you'll notice a form of lack of mastery and lack of self-restraint, which is not synonymous with intellect. If someone is intellectual, usually one of the general consensus that comes along with that, pairs with it, just uneven spoken about, is self-restraint. Someone who's, and I had to bring this up again, because I think unless you've been exposed to enough healthy intellects that aren't inserted into the matrix via YouTube under the governmental guide of seek, search, and destroy a community while they're waking up, you wouldn't be able to pair it naturally. Because a lot of the reason why a lot of these diabolical dark hybrids and governmental agents are getting so much love and so much attention from the masses is because for most they haven't ever seen that type of intellect before, so they are lured by it, which is okay. I think that's, most people are lured by intelligence. I mean, even Hitler, why Hitler was so popular is because Hitler was a hybrid, and Hitler had that hybrid, that reptilian hypnosis, and he was able to allure the people. So what they deemed to be as a hyperstate of intellect, their limitation and the cap on their genomes by not being exposed to these type of species before, made them susceptible to infiltration and indoctrination by these beings. Same with Nature Boy, same with Brother Polite, same with a lot of these pseudo-conscious males on here that are progenitors of conscious, quote-unquote, consciousness and higher state of metaphysics, when meanwhile they are agents for governmental experiments, and they are purposefully set out here to catch you in a web, and also to keep you from actually gaining a sense of a mastery yourself. Because if you see someone like a Cardi B, and I want to throw Cardi B in there, because if you keep sending these people out here, because remember, if you are perpetually showing something, or you are constantly being bombarded by something over and over again, you will eventually accept it. That's why most of these cults or these people keep repeating over and over again, because repetition creates infiltration. Like if you repeat something, that's why when you go and get tortured, they will torture you, deprive you of food, freedom, or of liberty, and they will keep perpetually saying the same thing over, asking the same question over and over. It gets inside of you. Eventually, it's part of the MK Ultra, the MK Ultra system, and eventually they will get you to either believe a practice, believe something, take it on for programming, or disclose something. It's very common with torture, When you have captivity of, when you have captivity of prisoners, or you have an MK Ultra system. You know, if you watch any of the Satanist programming systems, it's the same thing. Okay, so you have a cult leader, Eligio Bishop, who has a group of people and he's depriving them of food and nutrition, which many of the cults do. Another thing you'll see in most of the cults, they will have a certain nutritional practice. Now, people say to me all the time, oh, well, Fleur Brune, you know, eating well is, yes, eating well is healthy, but hold on, babe.
Mom,
Yeah?
she almost got ran over by a car and she doesn't care.
Oh my goodness. Okay, come and have her talk to me. Okay? That's not cool. Is she okay? What's she doing?
She doesn't care.
Okay. Let me have her tell her to come and talk to me. Sorry about that. Uh-oh. We have a problem in paradise. Hold on, family. I may have to leave because I got to talk to the little person. Hold on. Repetition. Why don't you hold on, because I got to attend to my little ones. It's more important for me to attend. You can hold on. I'm not going to go off. I'm just going to pause here. You guys talk. I'm not getting off, okay? Just give me like 5 minutes. I want to talk to my little one, okay? I'm on mommy duty, and that is my... All right. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. I'm back, and I'm eating too. Okay. I apologize about that. Little people. Everything's all good in the hood. What were we talking about? Reptilians, a repetition. Oh, repetitive programming. Thank you, Film Trust. Repetitive programming is very necessary. So why I brought up Eligio Bishop is because his previous member, who was there for a long period of time, and I wanted to discuss this because I love our young sea stars. I really do, and I love the fact that they're waking up, and you know, many of our young sea stars and sun stars, you know, the millennial, are actually like are probably our ancients coming back, you know, star seeds, and a lot of them are getting caught up with these cult type of people, polygamists, you know, manipulators. I'm sorry, and they are being susceptible to this kind of infiltration. And one of the things I wanted to bring up is you had Velvet, who recently left under the cult of melanation. And I'm not a fan of this young lady because I felt like she was part of, as young as she was, I'll say it on one hand. This young lady was taken into the cult when she was young. She was about 18. I think she was 18 or 19 when she came into the cult. Which gives her, you know, I have to be very gingerly with that because part of the reasons why I explained to our young sea stars it isn't appropriate for you to get with a lot of these vampiric older males. There isn't anything healthy about a 50-year-old man or a 40-year-old man or a 35 or 6-year-old man wanting to get with a young woman unless he wants to manipulate her or breed with her. Okay. The reason why a man of that age would want a young woman is because she is impressionable. Yes, melanated high priestess said, yeah, she's impressionable. She's easy to be, and also if she's coming off of the internet, she's enamored. Okay. That's why I say the internet, you know, as much as I'm grateful for YouTube for allowing this platform for us all to come together. I am very grateful. I have to say that. You know, it's like, you know, it's a double-edged sword, but it also allows a lot of people who are mentally ill and also a lot of these species that are parasitic men to basically parasite and vampire and lure young people off of the internet and, you know, basically bring them to harm's way. And, you know, Nature Not, Eligio Bishop, who has the cult Carbonation right now, did so. And he's more alluring to the young people because it's something they haven't heard before. And again, we're all in the age of awareness. We're all waking up. And sometimes you see these wonderful people, including myself. You may think, oh, you know, this person is one way. And next thing you know, you meet them and they're absolutely the opposite. And I would say to you, there's nothing that I should share with you or anyone should share with you that should trump your own mind, your own first mind. You can listen to what I share with you all day. You can even use it as a form of entertainment, but unless you can vet it out for yourself, discernment is the key. You should only take in what you yourself can vet out, okay? because I could be all kinds of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, anybody can, okay? And I always say, utilize your own discernment to be able to know if something is healthy for you to take on, and it's okay to gain wisdom from people who you know may have some wisdom and you may resonate with it. But at the end of the day, we can't be your end all be all. You are the only one that should matter. And how you are able to discern things will also dictate which are susceptible for infiltration. Okay, so this young lady, Velvet, her name is Velvet. She was also known as Eliana. She was under this cult leader. She got with him at 18. He lured her off of the internet. She ran away from her country, went over to Costa Rica with him. I think she went to Costa Rica. I don't know if she was in Honduras. She might have started in Honduras and went with him to Costa Rica, and then ended up going to all of these Central American countries with him. And it started off as allurement of an amazing man that she thought was handsome. She found him captivated. She was captivated with his information, which he got off of Google. Okay, this man takes the majority of the information he gets off of Google. I'm being honest. He ciphers everything. I mean, even the women not wearing clothing, he ciphered for my platform because he thought I was naked all the time. The man is an ultimate vampire. He vampires off of the entire internet, and then he calls them downloads, and then he regurgitates it back to you in his own, mental how he mentally takes it in, fields it out, and then he shares it with you and says it's his information and it's his golden knowledge. Okay. And young people are allured by that. And the most young people that he's allured is people who come from broken homes like himself. People who've come from homes where they didn't feel loved, where they felt they weren't getting attention, where they didn't feel special or important. So here they find this guru online who seems like he's living the life. He's living in paradise in Central America, and then they go there, and then they're under the guise of a reptilian hybrid who has the capability of manipulating them, and over repetition will repeat the same things over and over, and then he limits their nutrition. And that's why I tell you a lot of times, be careful, because the majority of these hybrids or these cults, let's just say cults, let's start with cults, including Hitler themselves, majority of men who were mass murderers and were heading of cults were all vegans or vegetarians. Let me just state that. You can vet that out. If you look in history, even Hitler was a vegan vegetarian as well. Why does that matter? Because the form of nutritional limitation allows for infiltration. So the more limited you are in nutrition allows for a better infiltration of your mind. If you look at the members of Carbonation, they are all emaciated. He calls the men in his tribe warriors, but they look like they are literally corpses, walking corpses. The women getting pregnant there are also women that were having issues giving birth to healthy babies, other than Serenity, who's left already, which many of you knew was Fury at one point when she was in Melanation. Now Carbonation, she was named as Serenity, and she's since left Carbonation with her baby boy. Big up to them. Her and Rambo left and are living in Hawaii. And the little boy, I think, has some health issues because of the limitation in nutrition, because she also was limited in nutrition, and she was emaciated. And I personally think that had a lot to do with how the children are coming out, and how questionable the births were based on having complications. If they were living a healthy lifestyle and a B6 diet, the women wouldn't have problems giving natural birth. Okay, so it means that their diet isn't what he says, and also a limitation of having any food will cause people to be susceptible to mind control, and also will have a depreciated state of mental capacity. Okay, so it's interesting that this being is still online, luring young people to perpetually go over there so he can further feed off of them. And let me just state this, everyone. Reptilians will feed, and they need perpetual feeding. So now what no one seemed to realize is Allegio was always going to have more and more women And this is where polygamy is a form of vampirism, because a lot of these pseudo-conscious males use the guise or the lie of polygamy as a way to vampire off of the young females, because they don't have that life force in themselves, so they always need a perpetual feeding. That's why I say a lot of the reptiles, what you deem to be sexual behavior to replicate or to exchange love for other species of reptiles, sex is a form of energy exchange and ciphering. So if they come from a species of reptile, they need perpetual new feedings. They can't keep feeding. So if you look at Eligio Bishop in his world of carbonation, all of the women look like they've lost themselves. They look like they've lost life. They've been sucked dry, almost like that someone took a straw, stuck it in their back of their their spine, and just kept drinking off of them until they don't have anything left. And that's also a form. If you're with someone and you're losing your life force, that means they're a parasite and they're a vampire. If you have a friend who every time you're around them, you feel lifeless and you feel tired, that's a form of vampirism. Okay? And if you're with someone also, there's another form of that too. Not only can someone pull energy from you, but they can be energy dumpers. They can also be forms of, when they are dealing with negativity in their lives, they only call you and want to talk to you in order to disclose all of the problems or issues in their lives and energy dumping on you. Like leukoplasia, like I say, like how, how Eligio would have sessions they called, and excuse my language, because this is what he states himself. He calls them real nigger moments. This is what he calls it himself. He says real nigger moments. This is when he goes online and they talk about molesting their cousins. He'll have everyone in his group to disclose all of the diabolical things they did in their own family, molesting their cousins, molesting their sisters. He had sex with dogs. You know what? That's a form of energy dumping. So what he does, and it's a form of infection, because if you allow someone to energy dump on you, you take on that energy. So when he's telling you what he's doing, like when he said he would let an animal lick his genitalia, when he was saying, or his members were saying they were molesting their own cousins, this is all online. If you haven't, it's disgusting and it's sick, but this is what I'm saying. We have to be very careful of the things and the energy we allow, even in listening to, because that's a form of dumping. So just as much as he may feed off of people, he will release the Kraken on people as well, by releasing dark forms of sexual depravities that have to do with his species and make you more. And also, what this also allows to do is also make people more muted, or make some of the behaviors more acceptable based on the fact that he's doing energy dumping. He's putting these things out on Front Street by making them seem like this is what people do, which isn't what normal or healthy people do. There aren't healthy people that are molesting their cousins. There aren't healthy men that are allowing dogs to lick their genitalia. Those are all forms of deprived sexuality based on probably abuse that they dealt with, and also forms of, a predatorial behavior. And these are the people that he has around other children in his group. People have stated that they've molested, and these people have not been arrested. There's been no accountability or no repercussions from them actually doing these things to other younger family members. And I'm not even sure if there were ever any charges brought up from the young people themselves at the time who were abused by these perpetrators that are now part of Carbonation, that are living abroad in Central America. And that's also why he moved to Central America, making it more justifiable and less accountable for his behavior, because in another country, they're not really paying attention to you like that. And, it's interesting that most people that follow Nature Nut, Nature Boy, Eligio Bishop, leader of Carbonation, most of them are suffering from mental illness and also forms of I personally think some of the other hybrids also are allured by him, because they sense, also there's a pheromonic harmony with another reptilian like yourself. There might be some allurement by species, and they might be allured by him based on his behavior being very mirroring their own experiences. Okay, and it's very interesting that as Velvet is disclosing some of the behavioral patterns that she was, you know, engaged in herself, and also the things that she was exposed to. It's interesting. She says that everybody there was being drained by him. And they were being drained by him because when you're around him, he's strong. And if you notice, that's why I say, family, you got to be careful with these reptilians. She said it wasn't that he was eating more than everyone else. That's what our assumption was. He wasn't eating more than anyone else. He was feeding off of their energy. So if you notice that Nature Boy was the only one that held his loft, his strength. He still looked stronger than the males and females. Everybody looked emaciated and sick. If you notice, why wasn't that the case if everybody's eating 1 meal a day? Because he was not just feeding off of the food, he was feeding and vampiring off of their energy. And you have to be mindful of these vampires. I had been with a reptilian Nazi for many, many years. That man was a vampire. I felt sick. You know, also if you're around certain kinds of reptilians, they will make you sick physically. When I talk about Nazism, the Nazi that I was with, I've always denoted that being with him made me physically sick. And every woman that man is with has some sort of physical ailment. She usually gets some sort of physical, like one had an immune issue when she was with him that went away when she wasn't with him. Another one had been in the hospital for all kinds of brain tumors. When she left him, she didn't have them anymore. I was drained with him all the time. I never felt like I had energy. I always felt like I was off and foggy. A lot of these reptiles feed off of you, and because the more time you spend with them, the more ill you get. You start getting phantom illnesses that don't even exist, or are only created by being with someone who's perpetually, you know, sucking your energy. And that is a real deal. These vampires, we talk about the fourth dimensional reptiles. These fourth dimensional reptiles, they feed off of energy. That's why it is very important for everyone to just know that they exist. We don't want to, listen, there isn't any witch hunt under my guise that I am for. I know of reptilians. I know they exist. I know they're living amongst us. I know they've been created, some governmentally, and some are living with us that are more cohesive with us as humanity, and some of us are mixed with them. So I know they exist. This isn't to demonize any reptilian group, but you must know and acknowledge what you're existing with. If you know that these beings are existing, and for those who don't accept reptilians, okay, let's take away that. If you know that they're governmental system agents that are sent out here that have been MK Ultra produced, cultivated under a system of MK Ultra in order to be that type of parasitic or vampiric or or vampiric type of being, then take out the ET. Because if you can't accept the ET value, and I understand that may not be something that you can even accept exists, and that's okay. That's okay. And I'm not here to convince you, but I'll tell you that there are other things that you may be able to accept, is that there are beings here that are created for havoc and to create disharmony in your communities. They have done it in the love and light community. They have done it in the ET UFO whistleblowing community, and they've done it in the pseudo-conscious community. They've touched every community, and they've incepted by creating and putting agents out here to purposefully keep your attention and to guide you in a direction that would be most advantageous to those governments. They won't want you to wake up. They don't want you to be in harmony with others. They certainly don't want you to be in unity consciousness, and they certainly don't want you twinning. Those are all things that they are anti. So they want to starve you, nutritional wise and spirit wise. So what they do is they create and they promote anything they promote. You should question. I always tell people, years ago when I was in the vegan and vegetarian community, there wasn't any promoting of it. They promoted Atkins diet. Remember that? They promoted lots of flesh. Eat meat, you'll lose weight. Remember that? Okay. So people don't realize there's all these new systems that they're trying to introduce to you for a reason. Why all of a sudden, okay, the Atkins system, people got sick, people had heart attacks, strokes, all kinds of things, people's blood pressure, everything went up, crazy, okay? They were promoting that. That was like heightened. I don't know if many of you remember, maybe you're too young to remember when they introduced Atkins, right? Okay. And then all of a sudden, they didn't promote pescatarianism. They didn't promote flexitarianism. They didn't even promote forms of fruitarianism. What did they do? They promoted they promoted veganism. But when they promoted veganism, you say to yourself, why would they bypass vegetarianism, because vegetarianism can be healthy and you don't have to touch animal products. You can add some other things in there like honey and little steaks and things. Why would they bypass something or the natural way that a person naturally acclimates to another diet? Why would they go so extreme? Why would they go to Atkins and then totally switch you to one other extreme? Because they want to create imbalance in your life. That's all they want to do. They didn't tell you about the oxalates that were on all of the greens, that if you eat too many oxalates on the greens, that it ends up acting as nanobots and also helping to infiltrating your mind. And also the oxalates work with the computers, the blue field on your phone, and it helps to take over your mind. They didn't tell you about the oxalates. Many of you don't even know what oxalates are. Look it up. Okay? Would they tell you that? They don't want to tell you about the crystal oxalates in all your greens. That's why they won't promote fruitarianism or veganism, because veganism, if you're consuming anything that would mute the oxalates, because you have a muter. When you eat greens all day, that's why even in my culture, even from the islands, we do greens when we're sick. We do a lot more greens when we're sick. We do herbs when we're not well. We tend to do herbs or fasting with herbs when we're not well, and then we go back to fruits, or, a lot of the islands eat a lot of pescatarian, more so fish, okay? So we'll do that. But we won't go totally to greens, because there's a form of, you get sick even when you fast off of greens. I did my green fast. You get nauseous a lot when you eat too many greens. If you notice that dogs and cats eat a lot of greens, what do they do directly when they eat greens? They throw up, So they'll have you juice wheatgrass, you know what I mean? Wheatgrass. But when a dog eats greens, what does he do directly after it? It makes him throw up. What does it do? It activates his gut. It clears, and then he throws up because it attaches to something, and then he throws it up. He doesn't even keep it in his tummy. There's a reason for that. Whenever there's an agenda, know that there's a reason. Now you got Popeye's chicken that has some sort of, nanobots up in the Popeye's chicken. We don't even nano chicken sandwich. It's $3.99, family. When they're giving you away for free a chicken sandwich, you know something's wrong. Then they got a vegan match at KFC. So if they can't get you with the meat, they're gonna get you with the greens. Okay. So people always ask me, what do you think is healthy? I think eating healthy and being more of a flexitarian, meaning that what your body desires, give it to it with love. You shouldn't be hyper eating meat. I disagree with that. I don't think it's proper to eat farmed animals that have been abused. I think that takes in your frequency. I think you need to be conscientious of that. But if your body requires something to alchemically maintain itself, by all means, I personally know that you should enjoy. Okay, you should have it for your own balance, right? Melanated priestess being balanced. It's very important for you to do that. Intermittent fasting helps. Not eating all the time. It's not necessary. We eat to replenish our body and give ourselves nutrients. Okay? So you don't have to eat all the time. You don't have to eat every moment of the day. Okay? It's not necessary. That's also what they perpetuate. Keep eating. Keep cooking. Keep eating. It isn't necessary. When you're hungry, animals only eat when they're hungry. So when you're hungry, normally if we were in our natural environment, I go off the tree and I get some cherries. Or you get a pear, right? Or I get a mango, right? And I would have it. And then I would be satisfied. And then maybe when I went with my tribe and we sat together, we created something together. Maybe they would have fresh fish or something, cooked, and they would cook it under the ground. And also, in Hawaiian culture and a lot of the islands, they cook underneath the ground. So charcoal also sucks out some of that, disinfects, takes all the chemicals, and then they eat it. And they have it with fruit, and they cook it with sometimes greens on top. Okay, so, it depends, just be healthy. You don't have to stick to a dream. Like everyone's a vegan now. And it's very sad because, when I was eating vegan lifestyle and so on, I'm more of a fruitarian and a flexitarian. That's more of who I am now. You would consider me, if you saw me, more of a vegetarian. That's what you would consider me. But I'm more of a fruitarian, more of a flexitarian in that way. I go in and out of veganism and vegetarianism, fruitarianism, just however my body desires. I just do. I don't really say what I am because I don't have to, because I'm confident about, I'm holistic, I'm healthy, I have self-love. When you have to promote something, it's because you're trying to convince yourself. All these people are taking pictures of their vegan meals and vegan this every day. That's because they're trying to convince you. If you eat that way, you don't have to convince anyone unless you make a amazing pretty dish. Then I like to take pictures of a pretty dish, especially if it looks so pretty. But if you're perpetually every day taking pictures of vegan meals, Who are you trying to convince? Because if you naturally eat that way, many of you didn't know how I ate for many years. You just saw I grew a lot of my food, so you just assumed what I was eating. That's it, because I grew all my food. But if you're perpetually seeing that, that's also unhealthy. So why make this video about the infiltration of hybrids into the system is they have put these hybrids and they've introduced them through the foster care system. And for parents who are fostering children, and I say this all to say, I think it's an amazing, wonderful thing to host children that need homes. But whenever the government is involved and whenever money is involved, it's going to be infiltrated. If you have to get paid to take care of children and that's your incentive to even do fostering, it is a problem. Because there are a lot of children that are being abused in foster care because the parents need the money and they take foster kids in to supplement their income. But meanwhile, the children need food, need clothing, and they're being denied those things because the people who need children also need money. And that isn't healthy. Healthy people who want to help people already have an overfilled cup. Do you understand what I say? So when I say to you all the time, if you see Fleur Broom coming to you and giving you messages, it means that my cup, my till is overfilled. I will only come to you from an overfilled cup, from my overflow. I can only share with you from my overflow. If my cup is depleted or not even to a healthy degree, you won't see Fleur Broom. I will fill up my cup. When you have children and you're coming from a depreciative point of view, meaning you're financially lacking, that isn't healthy because you can't help others if you aren't even a system to help yourself. So fostering from a depleted position automatically has infiltration of unhealthiness. Healthy people adopt children. When people have extra, they give to children or they give to organizations. You have to redo the program of fostering, and it won't be redone by the government because the government has its own form of agenda. Okay, these children are being taken from homes. We don't know that a lot of these homes are unsavory, yes, but why not have people who have enough take children and rather than pay them? So listen, you can see the motivation of people if you take out money from fostering. I'm just saying, if you say to a person that wants children, because I know a lot of children who need fostering, and there's mothers who can't have children, who want foster children, who have to go through a whole big thing just to get foster children. There are mothers here who have the resources, and mothers and fathers who have resources, who want children, who have the resources to take care of children. Why not make sure that these people are efficient financially before you even send children into a home with people who have limited resources? If their mortgage is dependent on and being paid by having foster children, there's something wrong with that. And the majority of people that I even knew doing foster care were supplementing their income through foster children, and how their lifestyles was dependent on how many foster children they had or that money coming every month for foster children. And please tell me if I'm not right or being honest, okay? These children need to be protected, and hopefully there'll be a system after pole shift where any children that needs fostering and help, because again, I'm creating a sanctuary, and I hope and my dream is to allow for mothers who require a stable village kind of existence with healthy other women around and men, because it's going to be families as well. But I'm looking forward to also being a fostering of not only just children, but of animals and of plant life. So my goal and my dream is to have the sanctuary be able to host not just families that require that stability, but children who are requiring that kind of love, and for a mother to be able to bring her baby to me knowing that I will love her child, I will make sure they are growing up amazing, and that they will always know where their mother and father is, and to be able to flourish. That's my goal. And hopefully, I always fulfill my goals, but it's kind of like, it's my thought of things, because I think the babies need us, and they need the healthiest versions of us who can do those things. And the more that I gain resources is the more I feel like I should I want to be the change I see in the world. And I know that my daughters are going to be exposed to all children. And I have to be the first step in allowing that kind of healing. Every mother should. And hopefully that will be, that will be okay. And there's going to be doctors and nurses who are coming to the sanctuary. We already have them, veterinarians, and this will be a self-sustaining society, which hopefully will be. So I see it already. It's just I'm so cautious, and I make sure I do everything on the right accord. So it takes me a little longer, but that's okay. It'll come around. So I hope so. And you know, I think that's why I say with the fostering care system, the government being involved and money being involved, it can't ever go right. Okay, so these hybrids are around and they're feeding off of your yoni spaces. And I talked about this already, sea stars, as we have help on the planet now. And with this help, you'll be much more made aware of these type of beings, but you must protect your wombs. If a man has zero self-restraint and he cannot control himself around other women. Now, mind you, the nature of a male, a healthy male on this planet, is he wants to perpetuate himself. There isn't anything wrong with that. A healthy male, especially an alpha, wants to perpetuate himself. But healthy males love themselves and want healthy women, and they want their children to see them as healthy role models, okay? And as healthy men would also see is that they know that the more children they create with more women is the less that a child will feel secure in his family dynamics based on competition with other people's children. That's nature. So a healthy man will know if he creates too many children with too many different women, he creates unhealthy competition that will show up and they will try to vie for whatever resources he may or may not have. And that will play out with the women competing with each other because every woman wants all the resources for her own offspring. This is why I say all this polygamy talking, they never talk about the future. They don't talk about what happens to the children when they grow up. They don't talk about, they only bring up a pseudo concept that they've created based on some of the truth of the past that does not precede the matriarchy. Because when the matriarchy existed, polygamy didn't happen in that way. It was only uniformly created from males, for males. Okay, because a healthy male wants to prioritize his seed within one lineage. And the only time it happened other ways is if a woman could not, if she didn't give a son or there was some other reasons for that occurring where other men or women were being added to the pot in order to secure a lineage or create a child or a male child that may not be produced from just that one union. Okay, but just be careful with the polygamy agenda because that's a whole agenda that's coming up in this pseudo-conscious community. And as you see, family, I raised a challenge to all polygamists, and they all listen to me. Listen. I'm not that egotistical, but they listen to me. They watch my videos. They know what I'm talking about. I put a challenge to all polygamists to have a conversation with Flurburn. I won't debate because truth is truth. Why hasn't anyone come to me and said, Flurburn, I want to debate you about polygamy and say how wonderful it is? You know why? Because they know it isn't, and they know that I'm smart enough, wise enough, and seasoned enough that they won't be able to overtalk me, over-educate me, or try to sidebar me. That's why. So I still put that out there. Many of you talk to these pseudo-conscious males, okay? Many of you are on these platforms. I still put it out there. If any male or any female, for that matter, it doesn't matter, I'm an equal opportunist, we won't be debating. We'll be sharing our facts as they are. You are more than welcome to have an open forum and a conversation via YouTube. There isn't anything hiding here. And we can discuss polygamy. And I'm okay to have that discussion. And again, I know this will be unmet and unmatched because I'm about this life. And there isn't any male, especially from the patriarchal sect, who's coming from being infiltrated by his own insecurities that would even feel confident in a conversation with me about this. Because I like myself. So, you know, I put that out there. I always do. Just like the fast. There wasn't any of and the same males, let's put this again, my beautiful divine feminine females and males. I always put this out there. I always say, you know, you can also match me in fasting. You know, if a male has mastered himself, if he has self-mastery and he is a form of intellect that's healthy, he's able to have self-restraint and he's able to fast. A nature boy can't fast. He hasn't fasted off of sex. The only time he's fasted off of sex, alcohol, or his crazy rants is when he went to jail for a month. That's the only time he wasn't able to have sex every day with multiple women that were complicit in his poor, low fields reptilian behavior, or alcohol. So, again, these are all discussions that happen with people that are intellect is usually equated with having self-restraint. And that's why I know that these males are not what they detail that they are, because they lack physical self-restraint. And that's why they're perpetuating behavioral patterns of things that allow them to negate self-restraint. If I just say that I could be a polygamist, that I don't have to ever practice having self-restraint with women. And, I can perpetually just stick my wand and everything because I've created a whole belief system that, supports this, this which self is self-serving. They'll never promote something that isn't self-serving. Do you see what I mean? So it's very interesting. So it's interesting that Eliana has also spoken spoken about Eligio depriving people of nutrition, and how, again, it's post. The young lady is very mentally unstable, and also she's done a lot of crimes against her own sisterhood, and that is why, you won't hear me very fond of her, even though she was a young girl and she was manipulated. I think the core of who someone is always shows up whether they've been manipulated or not. So, you can do certain things to me, even under the guise of my old Nazi. Fleurbrun still showed up as Fleurbrun. If you told me to hurt an animal based on my Nazi telling me, he would be met with resistance and it wouldn't happen. You know what I mean? So people can only, even in their lesser state of being, they still show you who they are. And Liliana, based on her velvet, allowing other women to be abused, allowing other women when they died for their jewelry to be stolen and for their items to be worn as if their dead corpse wasn't just wearing that outfit. Those are all behavioral patterns of someone who was capable of doing that. I don't care if she was 16 or 15. If you told my little ones or your little ones to go and do something where a corpse is someone who they just loved and considered a sister, to put on the jewelry or take something of hers, they couldn't do it, could they? If they were healthy, they couldn't do it. So it already shows who she was and the core of who she was, and why we shouldn't feel sad or disheartened by these people who are joining by their own free will. These are not people born into these families. They're choosing to join Carbonation is because they are they're seeing something about themselves in that man, meaning that is who they are as well. So there aren't any victims in Carbonation. Those are people who are choosing by their free will. These are not people born into families in the Muslim countries that are being suppressed. These are not people born into families where they're being abused and they haven't had a choice. These are not people who are being put in foster care and they're being abused and they're being mistreated. These are people that have chosen that. And if you have a master teacher who you consider to be someone you honor, who's still sucking his thumb at age 40, and you think that is someone that you should learn mastery from, when he can't even withhold from having sex or alcohol or stop sucking his thumb to even show a sense of self-mastery, then I question your mental stability. Okay, I think a lot of times we have to take that into consideration. All right, like attracts like. Elle said, like attracts like. It always is. And be careful with these reptilians. These reptilians are very, very alluring. And if you aren't quite there yet in consciousness, you too might be susceptible to infiltration of a reptilian. You must know, if you are with a being that you perpetually feel is pulling from you, or you're getting sick around them, that is a sign that isn't a person that's higher in consciousness, or a person that's probably a vampire. Okay, regardless if you accept that he's another species or she's another species or not. If you're with a being that doesn't accept you for who you are at your core and is always trying to shapeshift you under the guise of their own narrative of how they think you should behave, basically mimicking how they deem you should behave, that's also a sign of an unhealthy reptilian agenda or someone who is vampiric. Okay, very controlling. So sociopaths tend to do that. The reptilians are very, very covert and overt. The ones who know who they are. Sorry about that. I get phone calls. I shouldn't do on my videotape on here. I apologize about that. I got neighbors calling me. The storm isn't coming through here, but it's like everyone's like hyped up. I just it's crazy. What we're saying. I was talking about hybrids, right? So Eligio Bishop is a reptile. He's some sort of reptilian. I personally know, this is my opinion. Notice what I said. Gotta be very careful on here. It's very insidious online. It is my opinion, Flurbur's opinion, that he is governmentally created and inserted into the populace in order to catch the weakest of the conscious beings. Listen to what I said. The weakest of the conscious, meaning that he catches them and infects them with dark incubus that are going to be attached to the incubus and succubus. I personally think he has diseases of mass destruction, is my opinion. I don't know this for a fact, but he is infecting people. So I personally think he was sent out here to catch the least of the most enlightened in order to infect them, because once they get the incubus and succubus, it'll be very difficult for them to make it to the ascension point. This is my opinion. So they've created that. I think Brother Polite is one of them. Who else is another? There are clones that are also in the pseudo-conscious community. And this is where I personally think that when you feel Umar Johnson, someone mentioned Umar Johnson. Umar Johnson feels more like those who would be in the empty cedar, kind of like could be engineered kind of being, but he's so egotistical. He's just like a low-field human. He hasn't been loved. He's like Sugar Bear. He feels like he hasn't been loved as a young man. And this is where we go into the conversation, not as a judgment as a mother, but I say to you, my beautiful family, love your babies. If anything you get from me, if you don't like me as a person, if you think I'm all kinds of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, if you think that I'm all kinds of ET, just crazy or what have you, the one thing, if you could just take my advice, love your babies. If you don't want to love your babies, don't have them. Please don't. Love them. Love your little boys. Little girls, you have to love and protect them, but little boys too, to the same degree as young little girls, because the little boys are being hurt in ways that you cannot take back. We were just having this conversation yesterday that a lot of little boys are molested by 16 and 17-year-old. I think, did I do this online? I don't know where I was having this discussion. A lot of little boys are being molested by their babysitters and big sisters and cousins. We really don't talk about that a lot. It's something I think I want to definitely bring up. Mothers, stop letting your little boys go stay with the uncle and babysitters. Little women are molesting little boys. I have heard so many men tell me that their babysitters were sodomizing them as little boys, letting them suck on their breasts. My past husband, said the babysitter was letting him do that. She was older than him. She was having, you have these young ladies that are having the little boys masturbate them. A lot of the boys that we know, men that turn into men, many of you can actually vouch for this. A lot of our men on here, the babysitters. Now, if we reverse that and said it was a 16-year-old man molesting an 8-year-old girl, we'd be up in arms. Oh my God, take him out, blah, blah, blah. But why aren't you up in arms when you hear a 16-year-old babysitter molesting an 8-year-old little boy? An 8-year-old boy having sex with a teenager is abuse. It is absolutely diabolical. You should just be as much in up arms about that as you would at a flip mode of a male doing it to a female at that age. We have to protect our little boys. If Flurburn is so lucky to have a healthy little boy, by all means, I will practice exactly what I state publicly. Our little boys aren't being protected. A lot of their sexuality is also being changed and grafted by early sexual exposure that could have been prevented based on that. Like, there's an online blogger, she calls herself a blogger. It's kind of disgusting, and I never want to speak against anyone, but it's when you hear of someone's child being when you're hearing of someone's child being molested, there's an online blogger, and many of you know who she is. And again, it's not to say that we as parents always will come up with, our own trials and tribulations. We're learning as we go. But, if someone outwardly says that their child has been violated, which is disgusting, we all are in uproar and very saddened by that. But if the same person who discloses that their child who has been molested is perpetually allowing males to be around her family dynamics after already having a violation, you have to question the sanity and the actual priority of these women. Be careful of these pseudo-conscious women too. You know, a healthy mother doesn't allow strange males around her offspring. It is natural. When you have children, it is your priority. It should be your priority to protect your child to your own death. Okay, you know, when you have women who put their children in harm's way by allowing strangers into their house, or allowing even family members can also do this. You know, you have to really question if you have a woman who's doing it to her own children, that shouldn't be a woman you allow around yours. Okay, that's one thing I know. If I see a woman who is perpetually putting her children in harm's way by allowing males to be around her children all the time, that woman won't ever be around my children. You could call that a judgment, but I prefer to be wrongfully right and have protected, healthy daughters that grow up healthy without ever dealing with such matters than someone who is, unhealthily wrong, and then ends up being righteous, just trying to appease to someone's personality and having my child being put in a harm's way. You have to be mindful, family, and I want you to watch your boys. Boys are being molested at the heightened, almost to a higher degree than females now. They're being anally activated with their kundalini, and this is a conversation I think nobody wants to talk about, but as a mother, I think it's my way of telling you, because you know where my heart is with children. When they activate the children, any anal sex, you already know my detail. Anal sex is unhealthy sex. There isn't any anal sex that's healthy. When someone is going into a cavity that is meant for excrement, you know something's mentally going on there. That isn't normal. That's another form of some sort of acceptable behavior that's been perpetuated by unhealthy species that are in... Oh, hold on. Yes? Sure. Okay. By letting people inside of your anal cavity, that's a sign that something's wrong and it isn't healthy. So if anyone's sitting there telling you that anal sex is healthy, there's healthy ways, that something's mentally going on. There isn't any anal sex that's healthy. Anal sex is a excrement exit point, and when you placing something that is meant to perpetuate life into something that is to expel, something is going on, whether the system has perpetuated something, they're suffering from something. Okay, and that is not linked to all homosexuals, because someone says, oh, you're attacking homosexuals. That isn't true. That's untrue. I know a lot of straight people who have anal sex. So if that was totally designated to homosexuals, you would see only homosexuals, and gay women don't have anal sex. Most of them don't. So that's why I say be cognizant of what I'm sharing, because some people get sensitive because they know what I'm saying is right. So they get defensive, and then they say that I'm anti-gay. That's untrue, because if that's the case, then straight people wouldn't be having anal sex, and also gay women would be having sex that way. So they're not. So it kind of exmays that theory. So just be cognizant. Anal sex, why they do it to little children and young boys, is to activate the kundalini preampt, and it's for them to compartmentalize their brain. Okay, so that's why I say protect your boys. Now they do this with females as well, but when they do it to boys, it's another frame of the there's another point of reference of the boys that's activated that women don't have. Okay, so protect your boys. It's keep babysitters away from your children. If you can't have your mom, if she's healthy, or a grandmother, matriarch is usually healthy. Elders are usually very healthy, if they're healthy. If an elder was healthy and protective of you as your youth, then your mother would be protective and healthy of your offspring. If she wasn't healthy and protective of you when you were young, that is not someone. So I don't say to default to your mother. If your mother wasn't protective of you as a child and she left you susceptible to infiltration, that isn't somebody that you allow to watch your child even in their elderly stage. Because if she didn't have it at the stage that she was supposed to naturally, it's going to be lesser when she's an elder. Okay, do you understand? So it's very important for you to be mindful of that. Okay, watch your boys. Very, very much so. If I hear another man who's been molested by a female, a babysitter, it's, I take a testament, and, when I hear about that, I look at the mother. You just be mindful. Women molest little boys. Teenagers molest little boys. Okay, babysitters are molesting little boys. Big older cousins are molesting little boys. Okay, big sisters are molesting little boys. Aunties molest little boys. Some mothers molest little boys. Teachers molest little boys. Nurses and doctors molest little boys. Okay, priests molest little boys. Okay, watch your boys. Okay, there isn't anybody who should be around your child that's not it's kin. And I, like I said, I'm seeing, online predators utilizing the fact that women are desperate for attention and affection, and they're allowing men into their children's lives where it's unnecessary. If you are dating, my young sisters, it's my opinion and it's just my recommendation as a mother who's done it. Keep men out of your house and women out of your house. If she's unhealthy with her own offspring, she shouldn't be around your children. If you have a man that you're like and you're dating and you're twinning, there isn't any need. If you can afford to date, then you can afford to have, freedom outside of your household without letting a stranger into your cubby hole, into your little burrow. Okay, the burrow, the place of your children should be sanctity. It should be a sanctuary. There shouldn't be anybody allowed in your house that isn't of that frequency. Okay. How do you feel about gynecologists? I think I talked about, who was I talking about this yesterday? I can't remember. I must have talked about this on IG. I was figuring I was talking about this. I just think it's unnatural for you to let people inside of your yoni space like that. I think unless you have a problem that needs to be addressed, I don't think it's natural for you to let people inside. I think even when I was giving birth to my children, I did not like anyone down. When I was pregnant, I did not like anyone between my legs except my mate. To be honest, I think that's the violation. They make you accept that. I think it should be illegal for a male to be a gynecologist. I think that's part of the problem. I think that's sick. I don't think a gynecologist should be a male. I think most doctors shouldn't be males to a certain degree, unless they're specialists in certain things. I think, this is my opinion. You can have your own opinion. I just think it's not natural. I think if I have a doctor, I would prefer a female. And I want to make sure I know her background. Same practice, also, I make sure I pick women who looks very similar to me, genetic wise. So I know that when I pick a doctor, even with my children, I wanted to make sure they had the same phenotypes, because people tend to be better practitioners if they understand you. If someone looks very different than you and they're not even exposed to people like you, and most doctors are not trained with genetic differences in different people. They just know what most people will have. So they'll say, oh, brown people have more osteoporosis, da 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 da. They just know those things, but they don't know that maybe certain types of sulfur shouldn't be given to women of color, okay? Because they end up having, I'm allergic to sulfur, because I come from the islands where we had volcanoes, and most women who are indigenous, like myself, who come from those regions, we have a sensitivity to sulfur. It goes along my matriarchal line. The doctors who knew about this were women of color who came from same regions. So I tend to pick doctors who are very similar to myself. I don't agree with having male doctors address females. I just don't. Call that a little archaic, old-fashioned. I just think it's unhealthy. And personally, gynecologists, especially your GYN, I think it should be a female. I think it should be outlawed for men to be GYNs. I think it's an abnormal, and I think it's an abomination to have a man go in between your legs like that. I don't care if he's a doctor or not. Why would he want to even go down there like that? You got to think, when you start listening to the Satanists and Luciferian practices and the people who are part of these sects and these orders, you wouldn't want a gynecologist as a male in between your legs either. Even a female could be part of that, but I'm just saying, when you start seeing the agendas play out on a Satanist level, you'll be paranoid all over the place. Your aunt was allergic to sulfur. She may have been from where I'm from. Sensitivity to sulfur usually happens with certain indigenous that come from volcanoes. Where there's areas where there's heightened amount of volcanoes. Unfortunately, some of the best surgeons, Ben Carlson, being one, is a male. I don't say that. See, remember, my theory is a little different. I don't say that there aren't phenomenal male doctors. I've had them. Big up to the doctor who saved my life. Remember that time I got attacked? He saved my life. He was watching my videos. He knew where I was, which was interesting. He saved my life. I'm just saying, I think it isn't natural for males and females to be interacting in that way on a physical form. I don't think it's natural. I think it's unhealthy, and I think the patriarchy has made us feel comfortable with males engaging with us on a physical level like that. I don't think it's natural. I think we're supposed to mate with males at certain points. I think we shouldn't be exposed to them overly, and I think that's why we have a lot of issues. I'm just reading the comments. And males' brains work a little differently. There's wonderful surgeons who are males and wonderful doctors that are males. Pap smears. And also, you know, I question what's on those cotton balls, you know. Do they have a different cotton ball when they know that I'm a woman of color? Okay, when you listen to some of the you know, like the Tuskegee experiment, when you listen to the Puerto Rican experiment with the who was it, the birth control that was given to the Puerto Rican women that made them sterile. Remember that? Okay, so when you know that they do things like that, past behavior is a good indication of future behavior, okay? Is the needle vaccination for brown boys going to be different for the needles for vaccination for a lunar boy? Okay, you have to be mindful. There's an agenda. You know, when I go in the GYN, there may be a different cotton swab that goes in me than will go in my lunar sister. Okay, they've been doing this for years, so I trust the government with my body like I trust a crackhead who just got out of rehab yesterday, okay, and is on the same streets and in the same exposure to the elements that got them into that rehab. So you know, you just got to take that in consideration. Whenever somebody gives me something, I tell them to give me another one. I'm like that. I never take the first box. My girls do it too. I never take the first box out of anything. When I go to the grocery store, I always take the boxes behind. If I go and get a pastry, I always get the pastry to the back. If I go to the doctor and I have to get something, I always tell them to give me another one. So if they bring me one, I tell them to give me another one, because then I'm messing with their agenda. So I just, you know, call me paranoid, but I listen, it is what it is at this point. Like I said, I trust very little. I trust myself with my body, and I trust my first mind. And I know that I have my own agenda of living healthy and well and being a mother to my children and seeing my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. In order for me to do that, I have to supersede my level of acceptance of others' agendas. And I have to create my own. And my agenda is to be here in a healthy way for all of my offspring and my lineage, so that I perpetuate a lineage that I can even be incarnated within and be grateful for. Okay? So, yeah, the world is what it is. I don't really judge it. I know that I know what it is. You can only change what you acknowledge. Okay? That's all. You can only change what you acknowledge. I acknowledge so much, so I can change a lot. That's all. My pattern of behavior is based on the intel that I know, and that's it. And I share it with you. Someone asked me the other day, like, why do you care? Why wouldn't I care? You're asking me why I care, but why didn't you ask me why wouldn't I care? Your children will be exposed to mine at one point of reference or another. Why wouldn't I want your children to be as healthy? If I love myself and I love my children, why wouldn't I want to express that and share the healthiness that I know, so that it perpetuates and goes throughout the society? That's just what it is. People who hoard information or things that could be helpful to others, there's an agenda behind that. They want for themselves at the depreciation of your own. That's why in the UFO and ET community, you won't hear them talking about extraterrestrials that are brown women or brown ETs. They won't tell you that the majority of people on this planet who have the majority of wealth are dark brown people. They have an agenda that they won't tell you, because they have a benefit of you being depreciative and having a depreciative state of mind. That's all it is. It's as practical as that. There isn't any judgment of that. Just acknowledge that. So now, as an intellist, I know the agenda of like a Carrie Cassidy. You don't hear me talk about Carrie Cassidy anymore, do you? You know why? Because I accept that. I accept that she gives intel based on what's beneficial to people who look like her, and what's beneficial to her family, people in her lineage. I know that she's an intellist that is very limited in giving truth to those who she doesn't like on a genetic level. It's a fact. I've seen her over the years do it. I don't even talk about her anymore. You know why? I just mentioned it just as a frame of reference, because how she feels about me or people who look like me has zero to do with me. And what she doesn't realize is karmically, she set herself for a karmic ricochet that will end up doing that to her, because maybe there's going to be a point of reference when we go into the shift where she may want to know something that has to do with people who look like us, or ET groups that have some agenda that may be against her and hers. So she may need that information that someone won't give her, and it will impede her life or maybe put her life at risk. That's on her. That has nothing to do with me. I share with y'all equally. I don't care if you're lunar. I don't care if you're brown. I don't care if you're green. I don't care if you're reptilian. I don't care if you're a zeta. I will share with you because it isn't harmful to me. It's all about you. It's all about how I feel and my integrity when I share the information. That's all. You can take the information or not. It doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter. I share from an open heart and open space with integrity, and that's all I can do. Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. That's why you see that on this platform. You see all these wonderful people on here. There's lunars. There's people from Sudan. There's people on here from, Europe. There's people on here from parts of outside of Africa, South Africa, North Africa. There's people on here from like Maine, people on here from Cali. You know why everybody gets along on here? Because we have an open forum. This is, my consciousness is unity consciousness. So my platform will reflect who I am as a person. So that's how you know who someone is when you go to their platform, because uniformly we create aspects of who we are. So when you come here, I won't allow anyone to be disrespected or disregarded on my platform or my group in Cypher. That's why a lot of people have gotten removed. I won't let a child be talked about or disregarded, even if I don't like the person who the child comes from. I won't have you talk about someone as an animal because they look different from you, because you have an issue with how these people have been deemed or promoted in your life. It's just it isn't what I do. I've superseded that limitation in the matrix. I want well for all, even those who may not want well for themselves. Anyway, family, I've overstayed my balance. I've got such amazing headache. I just the air, like it just, it's weird that I rarely get headaches, but the air, it's like pulsating. I can feel it. So I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go 577 insulted LGBT. Who insulted LGBT? And I'm not. I would never insult anybody who's sexually of a different orientation. If you sleep with women, if you sleep with men, I do judge you if you sleep with animals or children. Okay, that's where it stops for me. But if you're a man who sleeps with another man, that is your personal prerogative. I don't have any issue with you. I think it's disrespectful to talk about somebody who loves somebody else. If you're a woman who sleeps with a woman, why would I hate you? It makes no sense. Who you love is who you love. There's agendas with other things. I talk about that, but when I prefer you to love someone, I want you to love someone. And if you love someone who's your same sex, all the power to you. You know what I mean? I think that's beautiful. I'm not mad at anybody for loving people. I prefer, like I said, I want you to love. And if you love someone of the same sex, there's plenty of heterosexuals who hate each other. I know more heterosexuals who abuse each other than anything else. So, it's an equal opportunity in this world. So, just why teach kids gay activities? That's an agenda. There's agendas, and then there's people being who they are. Okay, so there's agendas. So we have to be careful demonizing. I'm not going to say to someone who contracted something, you're a terrible person. Not all people who show up in a certain way are part of that. So it's just, you got to be mindful of that. Them promoting gay, quote unquote, gay same-sex thing, that's an agenda based on whatever's going on in the society. Okay, they do that. You don't have to be a party to it, or you can explain to your children what you consider to be the different forms of life. I talk to my girls. They know that there are people who express themselves in different ways. And I tell them, keep from judging them. Everybody is a certain way. I tell them about the different species of beings, that earthlings are usually male to female, but people show up very differently based on expression or how they grew up or what they're exposed to. Okay? So they know the all different formats. But, you know, when there's agendas. You should just know an agenda. There's an agenda. That's why they give you fluoride in your water. There's another agenda. They'll tell you fluoride is good for your teeth, but they won't tell you it eats away at your brain and your pineal gland. You know what I mean? So there's agendas, okay? But if you love same sex, love who you love, okay? As long as you're not beating them up and hurting them, you know, you're in alignment. Because once we go into 5D up, you're going to see beings who have sex with others like themselves. I mean, when we go into the ET conversation, that's what I'm saying. That's how you know who's been exposed to actual ETs. Contactees don't have this issue. Contactees show up as contactees, okay? I also know that a lot of the people in UFO contactee experiencers are not experiencers because they wouldn't be prejudiced and they wouldn't have issues with same-sexters. Because if you're in the higher, if you're having exposed to extraterrestrials, you'll realize that extraterrestrials do things way different. They're different species. Some of them are asexual. They don't even have sex with others. They're just very solitary. You know what I mean? There are those who only mate. Centaurians only like being around other males. They only mate with females as a necessity. Centaurians. They don't like mating with females. They just do it to perpetuate themselves. There's so many different types. You know what I mean? So when you expose to beings that don't even look human, how could I be prejudiced? It's almost like going to a country as an American, and then you go into another country and you have problems with Americans that look brown or light, and then when you go into another country, they don't speak English, you're friends with all Americans. You know what I mean? So it's like you have so much more appreciation for being an earthling when you're exposed to other non-earthlings. That's why I know is, you know, when you get past this stage and limitation, complexionism doesn't mean anything. You just want people to be of similar frequency and have healthy state of interaction with you and yours. That's it. Yeah, how are you open to extraterrestrials, but you don't even like brown people? That's what I'm saying. You know, until and it isn't. I don't want to get invited to the bigger conferences, but that tells you how much truth they aren't sharing at the UFO conferences. I'm the #1 ET and tellus as far as women of color. Probably the only one who talks about it as publicly. I haven't ever been invited to a UFO conference. Why does that? Why do you think that is? They'll have brown men go to only two, okay, go to UFO conference. Why haven't I, as a woman of color, copper woman, who talks about ETs for 5 years, they all know me. They know my name. I'm in the UFO. Why won't they invite me to their conferences? There are people talking about crazy things at the conferences. So I'm probably I'm sane in the spectrum of light. Because you say, oh, maybe they think you know. They have people talking about they're blowing up bases in their consciousness. They're having, you know, they're having sex with. Why? Because they don't want you knowing there are women of cosmonauts that look like me, because I look like the cosmonauts that are landing as we speak. They don't want you knowing that. I look like the cosmonaut that they found on the dark side of the moon. They don't want you knowing that. They won't ever invite me to a conference. I can predict it. So if you know that's the case, know that those who are having those conferences aren't what you think, and most of them are agents already set up purposefully to create and to divert the narrative. That's all. I'm not saying everybody at the conference is fake, because it's people who are legitimate, obviously, but I'm just saying the people who are creating the conferences have an agenda, and most of them are agent-based. So, not to say I'm the #1 person, but when you only have one woman of color who talks about ETs for 5 years, and there isn't, Delbert Blair was never invited. That's another thing. Delbert Blair was one of the #1 ET. That's what I'm saying. The more legitimate you are in the ET, as far as being in interaction, is more you won't be invited. When someone's overly being invited to the places, it's because you follow the narrative that they want. The narrative is that they exist and only those who look like them exist. So when you know, it's actually a compliment. Okay. Anyway, family, I'm off. I'm going to go lie and watch some Netflix, wait for whatever Billy Carlson is Carlson isn't a contactee. He isn't a contactee, and he only speaks about history as he's learned it. Billy Carlson is used as a token. It's my opinion. I know people are gonna run with that. Billy Carlson is used as a token to conferences that have zero melanation. They like tokens. They do. They will only have people who are good with theirs. You know, I won't go to a conference and kiss anyone's tail. I will just share the truth, and I'm okay with me. I like my curly frizzy hair. I like my, I'm actually the narrative that they don't want. I'm a brown copper woman who likes brown copper men. You know, they want people who mimic or emulate what their agenda is. I'm a melanin dominant woman who speaks about melanin dominant contact and others, and also I like myself. I date people in my same blood type and my same phenotype. Okay, so when you have someone who likes themselves as a woman of color in a planet where we pass the cycle where she's the lowest on the list, they don't want that kind of empowerment, and they don't want you knowing that there's women cosmonauts that look like me that are here on Earth. So it's no diss to Billy Carlson, because I don't say he's a bad person. Let me rephrase this. I don't want people going to him saying, "Oh, she said you're a token." He's being used as a token. That's all. That I know it for a fact. I've talked to people who I talk to a lot of people. He's being used as a token because he represents someone who he isn't a contactee. I know it for a fact. And he upholds a narrative that makes those in those agenda-based ET conferences look good. He is an anti to what they represent. He's cohesive with them. And like I said, I have self-love in every way, in expression. And that, as a woman, it bothers them. It's a patriarchal system in the UFO ET community, too. It isn't a woman who's created those platforms. So I don't want to make it seem like it's just brown women. There aren't a lot of women in those platforms either, okay? I don't want to start any beef. There's no beef. I don't have a problem with them. Let's just state that, yeah. The cosmonauts there's a group of, it's several. You have cosmonauts also that are the kitten. They look like kittens, cat beings. They're here too. There's a lot of female cosmonauts, but there's brown cosmonauts that are found everywhere. There was one found on the dark side of the moon. There was another one found in South America. They hide them for you. There's actually a whole part of the Americas that is dedicated to women that look exactly like me, with the coils of the queen that you see behind me, the Empress. There's a whole town that they covered up. They won't show you. There's a whole village dedicated to this one sea star you see behind me, with UFOs and everything on the actual monuments, on the actual Mesoamerican pyramids. They've hidden the town. The only people who've leaked it is a certain people in Peru who leaked it, and they got killed. They don't want you knowing that women like me are flying with super amounts of technology. They don't want you knowing that, even though we're in our cycle. That's why you won't ever hear, even when they talk about me, you won't ever hear me invited to the conference, because they don't want you to know that. But you don't have to get them to tell you or accept it, because I'm sharing it with you. And soon the whole world will know, because it will freak out. This is where they're not smart, because it's going to freak people out who aren't part of our platform when you see these women, because they're not going to stay hidden. They're going to come out. They already are. Once they come out, who's going to look like the big fat liar? I'll look like the big fat truther. They're not going to hide. So it's kind of like, it's against their own. They're kind of cutting off their nose to spite their face, because the truth disclosure is already happening. But when it is truly disclosed and you see these cosmonauts come and they've always been around, you'll know the truth. That's why it isn't necessary for me to be on anyone else's platform. I create my own. And for that reason, the more adversity and more they push and block me should let you know the truth. Because, like I said, you have people on there in a lot of these UFO conferences, nothing they could say could be vetted out. They're just, some of them are even mentally ill. So a lot of them do drugs or are alcoholics. I mean, you know, it's not a judgment, it's not a dig, but you know, if you get people who are perpetually smoking marijuana every day, they drink a lot of liquor and alcohol, and then you want them to be integrity ridden, I would question, you know, who's vetting that out. Anyway, all right, family, I'm gone. I know I'm talking too much. I'm going to go and lie down. I'm hot. I feel my head pulsating from this storm, beautiful Dorian that's in the coast, and she's doing a lot of devastation. But I hope the people of Bahamas will be able to recover. I'm sending a lot of love and protection to them. I'm very sorry for all they're going through. This is what, you know, the world is, the pole shift is upon us. All right, so I'm gone, family. I'm going to go, and I love you. I hope I didn't insult anyone. And, you know, just know I have I'm very truthful in that. Oh, thank you, Vicky. How do I put a higher amount on these apologies? How do I put a higher amount on this apology? Oh, no, you don't have to, Vicky. I appreciate that. Thank you, love. No, everything you give, I'm appreciative of. You don't have to, no one has to give any donations. Let me just state that I don't require it. Thank you. I appreciate it. I always appreciate it. It doesn't matter what you give or so on. I really appreciate it, but you don't have to. I'm grateful for you just being here. That's a lot for me. All right. So I love you, family. I'm out. You can tell I'm tired, right? I'm talking really slow and monotone, and I'm drug-free and alcohol-free and, you know, just tired. All right, family. I love you. Stay well, stay conscious, and stay out of reptilians' mind control. All right? Peace.